Good morning and welcome to the 48 and 48 Impact Lab. Today we're going to be talking to you about what's the right social media platform for your nonprofit. So stick with me for 1 second. We're going to pull to some slides which are going to give you all the information you could possibly want to know. So 48 and 48, if you didn't know, is a nonprofit devoted to helping nonprofits with their marketing and technology. They're known for building 48 websites in 48 hours in cities across the nation and in London. To learn more about 48 and 48, visit their website at 48and48.org. A little bit about me. Guess what? I'm a volunteer for 48 and 48. I run a social media and influencer marketing agency. We've been around since 2009, back in the early days. I'll be honest, our client base is primarily Fortune 500, but we've worked with many nonprofits in the past. I've served on the board of the Atlanta Women's Foundation and helped them build out their social media strategy. And presently, I'm on the board of the National Black Arts Festival. I completely understand that nonprofits have limited time and resources. So we're approaching this presentation with that in mind. By the way, if you have questions throughout this presentation, please drop them in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. So one of the most common questions I get from nonprofits is, where should I be? Sure, most of you are on Facebook. And if you've been around a long time, you might be on Twitter too. But then there's all these newfangled platforms like Snapchat. Should you be there too? Should you be everywhere? Well, even though the name of my agency is Everywhere, no, you can't do everything and be everywhere. You want to choose the right platform for your nonprofit. But before we even talk about platforms, there are 4 things I want you to focus on. I'm going to start with the most important. What's your bandwidth? No, really, what's your bandwidth? How much time can you allocate to social media? Who on staff will be doing it? Time and resources are limited for any nonprofit. So before you dive in, I want to make sure you understand the time commitment. Secondly, who's your audience? Who are you trying to reach? Where do they live on social media? Different social media platforms appeal to different audiences. So let's identify that right up top. Next, what message or content do you have to convey? Is it visual? Is it complex and require a lot of words to explain? Is it news focused? Different social channels work for different messages and mediums. And finally, what are your goals? What do you hope to achieve by being on social media? Oh, and no, sorry, goals are not attain new followers. Goals are more likely things like increase volunteers, increase donations. You really need to define what you hope to achieve by using social media. Okay, so let's address bandwidth first. Social media really is a beast. It requires content. Every social media channel you launch is going to need content to stay populated. It's not a faucet that you can turn on and off. Once you start a channel, you have to feed that channel. And to be honest, I personally love the it takes a village mentality, but sorry, it doesn't work for social media. You need a dedicated person managing those channels. I've seen a lot of nonprofits try this method. Hey, let's all chip in. Let's do it together. Never works. Your social media channels will be neglected and lack a consistent voice. Now, I'm not saying it's a full-time job, but I am saying that you need to get beyond let's do social media to we have a team or a person who can commit X number of hours each week to social media. So again, bandwidth. Who's going to do it? How many hours can you realistically commit? Please, please, please don't jump into social media until you've committed time and resources to the challenge. So audience, you know your nonprofit better than me, but every nonprofit has a different audience. Let's say you're a nonprofit theater. I hope you have a theater-going audience. And you might have opportunities for theater lovers to contribute or volunteer their time. And of course, your donors. I presume they're lovers of the arts. But these all might be 3 distinct audiences with different demographics to look at. Let's say you're an education program for kids that relies on volunteers. So for you, your audience are people who have the time to volunteer and care about education. Let's drill down. Who are they? What's their age? What do you know about their demographics? Some nonprofits have one clear audience, others have multiple. You might be a service organization and your audience might be the people you serve. But then you also have your donors. Again, 2 very different audiences, but you need to sit down and clearly define who you're trying to reach before you decide what social channel is right for your nonprofit. Next, message and content. What message are you trying to convey? What do you have to say? Is your message extremely visual? Maybe you're an organization that has lots of video content. Perhaps you have a program that's focused on advocacy and written communication is vital. Also, think about the type of content you create on a daily basis. Do you have a lot of visual content to share, or do you rely on newsletters and words? This will all impact your decision. And finally, and indeed, the most important are goals. And again, your social media goals are not to increase followers. Your social media goals are not engagement. Yes, that's part of what you want to achieve by doing social media. But your goals are why. Why are you spending time on social media in the first place? How do you hope to improve, change, or enhance your nonprofit? There is no one right answer. I've listed a few here. One possible goal is awareness. Maybe people don't even know your nonprofit exists or what you do. Fundraising, yeah, that's a major goal for any nonprofit. So fundraising, donor development, this is an important goal. Many nonprofits rely on volunteers, so recruiting volunteers could be a goal. Maybe you're an arts organization and you want to drive attendance. So sit down and think about your goals and how they relate to social media overall. I'm a huge believer in measurement, and the only way I know how to measure success is against goals. If your goal is fundraising, you'll want to set a fundraising goal and see if you can achieve that through social media. If it's donor development, that might be harder to measure, but perhaps you can measure it by the number of donors who learned about your nonprofit through social media. So what you've been waiting for, let's move on to platforms. You've addressed your bandwidth, you know your audience, you thought about the message you have to share, and you're clear on goals. Now, what platform? Well, first off, don't try to do everything all at once. Pick 2 or 3 and excel at that before anything else. So what platform really is right for your nonprofit? I'm going to think about audience first. You've identified your audience, but now you're going to want to figure out, where does your nonprofit audience live? Well, guess what? That's pretty easy to find out. And my favorite method of finding out, Google. Google, who's on Twitter? Who's on Instagram? But truly, the gold standard for understanding what demographic is on each platform is the Pew Internet Research Project. Every single year, they come out with the demographics of who is on each and every social media platform. And they slice and dice it by age, by income level, by demographic, by just about anything. So this is a great place for you to go when you want to find out who's on which social media platform. And the truth is there's many, many ways to slice and dice your audience. But at the end of the day, you want to be on the platform where most of your audience is consistently spending most of their time. Another thing I recommend that you do in addition to figuring out who's on the platforms generically is, I assume you're on social media already. Go ahead and look at your own analytics. Do a social media audit. Every single social media platform has insights that provides you demographic of who's already there, already following you now. You can get all the basic data like age, sex, location. Let me give you an example of when we did an audit for a nonprofit. We were working with an education nonprofit. Their goal was to reach high school students and their parents. This was a college readiness program. Well, when they were on 3 primary platforms, they were on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Well, when we did an analysis of their platforms, we found out that not a single high school student was following them on Facebook. Yet they were creating content on Facebook focused on students. No surprise, most of the teens were on Instagram and Twitter, neither parents or teens, but their education partners were following them. So this helped us to understand that their Facebook content should be focused on parents, Instagram on teens, and Twitter on their education partners. So look outside and look inside. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dig a little bit deeper, platform by platform. This is by no means comprehensive, but kind of give you a snapshot view of who's on what platforms and what content really thrives there. Let's start with the beast, Facebook. Well, we can say everybody is on Facebook, everybody but youth. Teenagers basically think Facebook is for old people, but once you get above 23, 24, 25, you can assume just about everybody is there. 70% of all US adults. Facebook is a great storytelling platform, videos and visual reign, and it's a great place for friends and family. How does that relate to your nonprofit? It's a fabulous community building platform. Instagram. 60% of their users are 18 to 29 years of age. 33% of their users are 30 to 49. After the age of 50, it pretty much so drops off precipitously. So if the audience you want to reach is somewhere between 80 and 49, this is probably a pretty good platform for you. But one thing to bear in mind about Instagram, it's visual. It's not a narrative platform. The visual aesthetics are very important. So don't go there unless you've got awesome visuals and Insta stories, which are a form of videos reign. LinkedIn, 28% of all male internet users are on LinkedIn. It's slightly more male than female. It's definitely business focused. Get a load of this, folks. 41% of millionaires are there. So we know the money's there. It's a business commerce site. It's definitely more formal, more long form. And the biggest thing to bear in mind about LinkedIn is no, sorry folks, it's not just a job search site. It's a business commerce site. Twitter. Twitter recently classified as a news site over a social media site. 23% of all US adults are there. Really, it spans a broad age range, teens to 50. The one thing I will say about Twitter is that frequency of usage is down, whereas people spend many, many minutes, even hours a day on Facebook. They're not spending that much time on Twitter anymore. And it's a place where you really have to be able to create content in 240 characters or less. On to Pinterest. The median age is 40, but the most active users are much younger. It's still an overwhelmingly female-focused platform. 81% are women. Again, it's a visual platform. If you're a wordy person, probably not for you. It's great for visuals. And these are the topics that really reign there: food, drink, DIY, home decor, holiday events. So those are your topics. That might be the place for you. And Snapchat. Everybody knows about Snapchat. Well, the truth about Snapchat, it's only used by 18% of US adults. 71% of the people who use it are under 34. Those who do use it, which are the youngest of the youngest in that under 34 set, more like the preteens to early 20s, they use it for a full 40 minutes a day. Your content disappears, it doesn't stay around, and it's really unique, quirky video. So again, thinking about the content you create, if that's you, and if that's your audience, maybe it's a place for you. And let's not forget YouTube. YouTube essentially has a broad demographic reach. Everybody uses YouTube. Remember, YouTube is owned by Google. It's the #2 search engine in the world. But to play on YouTube, you gotta have video. So what I'd like to do next is just to go through platform by platform and talk briefly about why you should or shouldn't be there. Now, this is not prescriptive, it's not comprehensive, it's not a how-to. That's coming later. Let's start with Facebook. I called it the beast before, and I'm going to call it the beast again. Everyone but the youngest kids are there, and it's not going away. It's a great narrative platform. You can use visual, words, and video, and it's a fabulous place to build a community. However, warning, Facebook is not free. It's pay to play. So if you're going to go there, you want to allocate a small budget to get your content seen. So stay tuned for the third 48 and 48 Impact Lab, where we're going to dive deeper into pay to play and how to get your content seen on Facebook. Instagram, owned by Facebook. There's lots of similarities. And Instagram is wonderful for any nonprofit that has a lot of visual content and is really trying to reach that 18 to 49-year-old demographic. But I'll be honest, Instagram is picky about its visual content. No grainy images, no poorly shot or edited photos. So if you're going to go there, you're going to have to up your photo game. I've seen environmental nonprofits, arts organizations, volunteer organizations really excel here, but you need to learn the language. Instagram speaks in hashtag over complete sentences and doesn't hyperlink back to your organization in your images. So that's something to keep in mind. Twitter. Lots of older nonprofits got on Twitter back in the day and have stayed there because, well, they're on Twitter. Twitter is probably not as necessary as it used to be. Remember, today it's classified as a news platform. It's great for advocacy groups. It's great for events because you can have live tweeting. And it's a good platform to do outreach to journalists and information junkies. Also, Twitter is wordy, but you gotta get your words out in 240 characters or less. LinkedIn. Oh, LinkedIn, the poor, misunderstood stepchild of social media platforms. Why aren't all nonprofits there? Guess what? Your donors are. I realize people think of LinkedIn as a job search site. It's not. And it's also not the place where you simply share your new hires. Last year, I was raising money for Covenant House, Georgia, and LinkedIn was my primary channel. It has a status update just like Facebook. So go to LinkedIn, share your nonprofit successes, efforts, and news here. But please, don't ignore LinkedIn. Pinterest, I'm going to call Pinterest an ancillary platform. And as a nonprofit, I go here only after I excelled at many other channels. Again, Pinterest is very visual, and I could see a nonprofit like Habitat for Humanity here. Maybe they have a board for materials in the house and another board for what to wear when you're building a home. But you definitely need the visual content to excel on Pinterest. And Snapchat. If you're a nonprofit focused on younger millennials, then maybe, but I'd make sure whoever was creating that content knew what they were doing. Snapchat definitely speaks a quirky language known only to the most ardent users, and it disappears unless you consciously save it. And finally, YouTube. Frankly, I think every single nonprofit should have a YouTube channel. It's not a site that you have to constantly populate, but you do need a YouTube channel to store any videos that you have. Remember, it's owned by Google, and if you title your content correctly and use good SEO, search engine optimization terms, your content will be seen. Let's say you've got a fabulous speaker at an event. Capture that content and upload it to YouTube. Perhaps you made a fundraising film. Upload that to YouTube. Maybe there are frequently asked questions for volunteers. Do something like I'm doing today to answer those questions and put it on YouTube. So hopefully what you've taken away from this is that when thinking about your social platforms, you need to think about the demographics of your audience and the type of content you're creating. That's going to lead you to the right platform. But before you get started, beware, social media is a hungry beast. It requires a lot of content to be fed. So before you launch any channel, take stock of how much time you have to devote. I'd rather see you commit to 2 channels and do it well before you try to do everything. So remember, we were going to open it up to questions. So now's the time if you have any questions, and our friends here at the 48 and 48 Impact Lab are going to let me know what questions have come up. Any questions from our 48 and 48 Impact Lab followers?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the questions that popped up here was, what one social platform would you say is a must do?
Good question. So the question was, what one social media platform would you say is a must do? I've got to say, as frustrating as Facebook can be, I say you really have to be on Facebook. In many ways, Facebook is an extension of your website. People go to Facebook, much like they go to your website, to get information about you. Although it's hard to have your content seen, it really is a fabulous place to house your content and have your content. You can also use it for community building. It's basically the biggest platform, the place people spend most of their time. So why wouldn't you be there?
As a follow-up question to that, what is your opinion on having a brand page on Facebook?
Oh, what is your opinion on having a brand page on Facebook versus, what do you think? Versus a personal page? Oh, yes, okay. No, it's gotta be brand. So as a nonprofit, you're a brand. Now, as an individual that works for nonprofits, or not works for nonprofits, but volunteers for nonprofits or raises funds for nonprofits, I obviously have my personal page, but your nonprofit really does have to be a brand page. You are a brand.
Let's see. When looking to target new donors, what platform do you think they should focus on?
Oh, good question. When looking to target new donors, what platform should you focus on? So in speaking to many nonprofits about their involvement in social media, I have a very strong opinion about this. If your director of development is not on Facebook and is not on LinkedIn, they're not doing their job. Because you really, the role of being on social media from a personal perspective is really doing that donor development. So from a personal level, you can use your Facebook and you can use your LinkedIn channels to get to know your donors better. Different platforms are more robust for donations than others. Facebook has definitely built in the ability for you to raise funds directly there. So again, I'm going to default to Facebook for probably being your primary channel. But also, again, don't just think about using social media from the point of view of what can the nonprofit do, but also your board, your volunteers, they all have personal channels where they can share information about your nonprofit. So one of your goals is to reach out to your volunteers, your board, your donors, and give them information they can share on their individual channels. I think I answered more than that question, but
absolutely. How often do we have to create content for each channel?
oh boy, there's no golden rule. Okay, there's absolutely no golden rule. So I could tell you, you need to post on Facebook this number of times a week. You need to post on Twitter this many times a day. The truth is, if you are gonna open a social media channel, you've got to keep it populated. Again, it's not a faucet you can turn on or off. You know, rule of thumb on Facebook is 3 to 5 times a week. Twitter, it really depends on, you know, are you in the middle of a Twitter chat? Then you'd be tweeting 10 times an hour, or you might be tweeting once a day. So every platform kind of has a different cadence. What you don't want to do is overpost in the hope that it gets seen. I'd rather that you strategically post and really create awesome content a few times a day or a few times a week, depending on channel, and really focusing on that good content being seen.
So we've seen a lot of Facebook buzz in the news with privacy concerns. Aren't people leaving Facebook?
Good question. Yes, we definitely have seen a lot in the news about the privacy concerns on Facebook. The Cambridge Analytica scandal has been all over the news. Well, surprise, surprise. The statistics show that people are actually not leaving Facebook. Usage has not dropped at all as a result of this. So at this point, we're not concerned about it. It still is the leading platform. It's a great platform for your nonprofit, but definitely tune in for that third 48 and 48 Impact Lab when we're going to be doing a deeper dive around pay to play on Facebook. Any other questions?
Let's see if any more come in. You say that Facebook is pay to play. How much budget do we have to allocate to it?
Okay, so that's the question, like asking, what's the overarching budget for a nonprofit? It really depends on the size of your overall marketing budget. If you're a smaller nonprofit, you can really experiment with very small spends. Maybe your first experimentation is with a $10 or $25 spend, and see what kind of results you get from that. So maybe you're trying to encourage people to attend an event. Try a $25 spend around that and see if you weren't actually able to drive attendance as a result of that. So definitely start with smaller spends, but there's no set budget. Again, it really depends on your overall marketing budget. I'm just saying that you should allocate some funds to Facebook because, let's face it, people spend hours and hours a day on Facebook, and you definitely want your content to be seen.
So here's a new question from the Cherokee Family Violence Center. For LinkedIn, do you have specific suggestions for content regarding reaching new donors?
Well, first off, I just wanted to say thank you to the Cherokee Family Violence Center. I know you do amazing, amazing work. So the question again was LinkedIn, do I have any suggestions?
Yeah, for content regarding reaching new donors. So what kind of content you should be putting out?
So content regarding reaching new donors. LinkedIn has just recently introduced the hashtag feature. It really wasn't part of their strategy before. So they're really encouraging users to use hashtags. So I would definitely use the hashtag domestic violence and things like that. But remember, it doesn't matter what platform you're talking about. People relate to stories. The stories of one person is more impactful than large statistics. So really kind of think about what stories you want to tell and which audiences on LinkedIn you want to reach. Are there advocacy groups? Is there something specific about donors? I would start to create content really focused on that.
There's a new question. Is it important to have one main page for your organization on each platform versus multiple department pages?
Ooh, okay, so is it important to have one main page on each platform versus multiple department pages? Okay, that whole question just terrifies me. First off, focus on where you need to be. I don't want you to be on every single platform. Unless, are you one of those nonprofits that has all the money, all the time, and all the resources in the world? You're not? Okay. So if you're not, I really want you to hone in on where you can be most successful. So pick 2 or 3 platforms. Now, when you talk about each department having a platform, remember how I talked about social media being a hungry beast? Okay, you're gonna have to feed each one of those department platforms. So it sounds to me that what you really need to do is have an overarching marketing goal as to how all these different departments ladder up to one main goal and feed those into your one great platform. So let's say in your case, maybe you're on Facebook, maybe you're on LinkedIn, and maybe you're on Instagram. I'd rather see you build the following on one of those platforms. And again, all the different divisions laddering up to one main goal. It's okay to share different messages. And certainly when you look at many nonprofits and you look at the things they do more than just one thing. So go ahead and share all those different things on one platform. That would be my advice, not knowing anymore.
Okay, it looks like there aren't any new questions right now.
So that looks like the end of our 48 and 48 Impact Lab. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay tuned. We've got 2 more great sessions coming up, and reach out to us, 48and48.org. There's opportunities to volunteer. I'm a volunteer, and I love getting involved in 48 and 48. Thanks for joining us.